I thought I had my life under control. 2 years of working myself to the bone, sacrificing sleep, relationships, and every weekend I had, all for this company. All for him. But when Dominic Hale looked at me with those cold, calculative eyes and said, "You're fired," my entire world collapsed in a single second. I stood frozen in his office, my hands trembling at my sides. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows behind him, casting him in an almost godlike silhouette. But there was nothing divine about the ice in his voice. "Sir, please. There must be some mistake." I managed to choke out, my throat tight. "There's no mistake, Andrew." His voice was so cold it sent chills down my spine, freezing me from the inside out. He didn't even look up from the document he was signing. "I don't keep distractions in my company. Pack your things. Security will escort you out in 10 minutes. Distraction? The word hit me like a physical blow. I was a distraction? For 2 years I'd poured my heart and soul into this place. I'd stayed late when everyone else went home. I'd skipped meals, worked through holidays, canceled plans with my sick mother, all to prove myself worthy of being here. And now this heartless man was throwing me out like I was nothing more than trash. My eyes burned with unshed tears, but I refused to let them fall. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. I clenched my jaw so hard it ached and forced myself to speak. "Fine. I'll leave." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "But remember this, Dominic. You didn't just lose an employee today. You lost the one person who was willing to do anything for you." His expression didn't change. That same stone-cold mask he always wore, like nothing I said mattered. Like I didn't matter. I grabbed my bag from the chair and walked toward the door, my legs feeling like lead. Every step away from him felt like I was walking through quicksand. The hallway stretched endlessly before me, and I could feel every pair of eyes on me, sympathetic, curious, judgmental. My coworkers whispered behind their hands, some looking away when I passed, others staring openly at my humiliation. Sarah from accounting reached out as I passed her desk. "Andrew, I'm so sorry. I couldn't stop. If I stopped, I'd fall apart." "Don't," I whispered, keeping my eyes forward. "Please just don't." The elevator felt miles away, my vision blurred, whether from anger or tears, I couldn't tell anymore. I just needed to get out, away from the curious stares, away from the whispers, away from him. When I finally reached the elevator, my phone buzzed in my pocket. An unknown number. I ignored it and jabbed the button for the ground floor. The phone buzzed again, and again. Frustrated, I yanked it out and answered without checking the caller ID. "Andrew Collins?" A deep, unfamiliar voice came through the speaker. "Yes. Who is this?" I snapped, not in the mood for small talk. "Mr. Hale's legal team. We need to meet with you. Today, 7 p.m. I've texted you the address." My stomach dropped. Legal team? For what? The line went dead. I stared at my phone, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Legal team? Was Dominic really going to come after me legally too? What more could he possibly want from me? I'd given him everything and he'd thrown it back in my face. The elevator dinged and I stepped out into the lobby. The security guard, Marcus, who I'd chatted with every morning for 2 years, looked away when I walked past. Even he couldn't meet my eyes. Outside, the afternoon sun was too bright, the air too fresh. Everything felt surreal, like I was walking through someone else's nightmare. I made it half a block before I had to stop, leaning against a brick wall to catch my breath. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text with an address to a law firm downtown. The message was brief and clinical. 7 p.m. sharp. Don't be late. I wanted to ignore it. I wanted to throw my phone into the street and disappear, but I couldn't. Whatever Dominic was planning, I needed to know. I needed to face it head on, even if it destroyed what little was left of me. The hours until 7 p.m. crawled by in agonizing slowness. I went back to my tiny apartment, the one I could barely afford even with my salary, and definitely couldn't afford without it. The eviction notice on my door seemed to mock me. 2 months overdue. I sat on my worn couch and called my mom's hospital. The nurse's voice was gentle but firm. "Mr. Collins, we really need to discuss payment options. Your mother's treatment—" "I know," I interrupted, my voice breaking. "I'll figure something out. I promise." But how? I had nothing. No job, no savings, no prospects. Dominic Hale had made sure of that. Who would hire someone he'd fired? His reputation preceded him. Ruthless, brilliant, unforgiving. One word from him could blacklist me from every company in the city. At 6:30, I forced myself to shower and change into the only decent suit I owned. If I was going down, I'd do it with whatever dignity I had left. The law firm's building was everything I expected: sleek, modern, intimidating, the kind of place where people like me didn't belong. The receptionist barely glanced at me before pointing toward the elevators. 15th floor. Conference room C. My hands were shaking as I pressed the button. The elevator ride felt like ascending to my own execution. When I reached the 15th floor, a man in an expensive suit was waiting. He didn't introduce himself, just gestured for me to follow. We walked down a hallway that smelled like leather and old money, past doors with names of senior partners I'd only heard about in business magazines. He stopped at a heavy wooden door and opened it. And there, sitting at the head of a massive conference table, was Dominic Hale himself. I froze in the doorway, my heart stopping in my chest. "You?" The word came out as barely more than a whisper. "You're here." Dominic looked up at me, and for the first time since I'd known him, his expression was different. There was something in his eyes, something that looked almost like desperation. No, that couldn't be right. Dominic Hale was never desperate. "Sit down, Andrew. I'll stand. Thanks." I crossed my arms over my chest, trying to hide how badly I was shaking. "You fired me this morning. What more could you possibly want from me?" He adjusted his tie, a small gesture I'd never seen him make before. A crack in his perfect armor. "I need you to come back." The room spun. I must have heard him wrong. "What?" "I need you to come back. Not as an employee." He paused, his jaw tight. "As my fiancé." The words hung in the air between us, impossible and absurd. And suddenly I realized this nightmare was only just beginning. My brain completely short-circuited. I stood there staring at Dominic Hale, the man who destroyed my life just hours ago, and tried to process what he'd just said. "Excuse me?" I finally managed to say, my voice coming out higher than normal. "Did you just say, fiancé?" Dominic stood up, his imposing frame making the spacious conference room feel suddenly smaller. He walked around the table toward me, and I instinctively took a step back. "My grandfather is forcing me into an arranged marriage," he said, his tone businesslike, as if he were discussing a merger instead of a fake engagement. "If I don't show up to the family gala next month with someone I'm supposedly in love with, I lose control of the company." I laughed. I couldn't help it. The sound came out harsh and bitter, echoing off the polished walls. "Let me get this straight. You fired me this morning, humiliated me in front of the entire office, ruined my career, and now you want me to pretend to be your fiancé?" I shook my head in disbelief. "You're insane." "I'm desperate." The admission seemed to cost him something. His shoulders tensed and he looked away for a moment, before meeting my eyes again. "You're the only person I can trust to pull this off." "Trust?" I took a step forward, anger flooding through me. "You talk about trust? You threw me away like garbage this morning, Dominic. You didn't even have the decency to give me a reason. And now you stand here and tell me you trust me." "I had my reasons for firing you." "Oh, I'd love to hear them." "It's complicated." "Try me," I shot back, my hands clenching into fists at my sides. Dominic's jaw tightened, but he didn't answer. Instead, he turned to the table and picked up a leather folder. "This is a contract. 6 months. You'll act as my fiancé in public. Family events, business functions, social appearances. We'll live together to make it convincing. After 6 months, we stage a quiet breakup and you walk away with $500,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. $500,000. That was more money than I'd see in 5 years of working. It would cover my mother's medical bills, my rent, everything. It would give me time to rebuild my career, to start over somewhere Dominic Hale's shadow didn't reach. But it would also mean spending 6 months pretending to be in love with the man who'd broken me. "Why me?" I asked, my voice quieter now. "You could hire anyone. An actor, a model, someone actually qualified for this kind of thing. Because you know me." Dominic's eyes met mine and I saw something raw in them that I'd never seen before. You've worked closely with me for 2 years. You know my habits, my schedule, how I think, you know the company inside and out. Anyone else would need months to learn what you already know, and we don't have months. And you think I'd actually want to help you after what you did? No. He took a step closer, and I caught the scent of his cologne, cedar and something expensive I could never afford. I think you're smart enough to see this for what it is. A business transaction. You need money and I need you. It's mutually beneficial. I hated that he was right. I hated that he knew exactly which buttons to push, exactly how desperate I was. My mother's hospital bills were drowning me. The rent was 2 months overdue, and now with fired by Dominic Hale stamped on my resume, I was unhireable. And if I say no, Dominic moved closer still, until he was close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. Then I'll respect your decision and you'll never hear from me again. But we both know you're not going to say no, Andrew, because despite everything, you're too practical to throw away this opportunity. My throat felt tight. You're an asshole. I know. Something that might have been regret flickered across his face. But I'm an asshole offering you $500,000 for 6 months of your time. I turned away from him, walking to the window. The city sprawled below us, lights beginning to twinkle as evening fell. Somewhere out there was my mother, lying in a hospital bed I couldn't pay for. Somewhere was my apartment with the eviction notice on the door. Somewhere was my future, crumbling into nothing because of this man. What are the terms? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I heard him move, heard papers rustling. It's all in the contract. We maintain the appearance of a committed relationship. Public displays of affection as needed. You'll move into my penthouse immediately. We can't sell this if we're living separately. No romantic or sexual involvement with others during the contract period. And absolute discretion. No one can know this is fake. What about? I paused, my cheeks heating. What about between us? What about it? I turned to face him. You said public displays of affection. But what about in private? What are the boundaries? Dominic's expression was unreadable. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. The contract specifies that nothing will happen without mutual consent. I walked back to the table and picked up the contract, flipping through pages of legal jargon. My hands were shaking and I wasn't sure if it was from anger, fear, or something else entirely. I have conditions, I said finally. Name them. First, my mother's medical bills get paid immediately. All of them. And her treatment continues for the full 6 months no matter what happens between us. Done. Second, at the end of 6 months, you give me a reference. A glowing one. You don't get to ruin my career permanently. Dominic hesitated, then nodded. Agreed. And third, I met his eyes, steeling myself. You tell me why you really fired me. Not now, but before this is over. I deserve to know the truth. For a long moment he just looked at me. Then he extended his hand. Deal. I stared at his hand. Strong, elegant. The hand that had signed my termination papers just hours ago. The hand that was now offering me salvation at the price of my dignity. I took it. His grip was firm, warm, sending an unexpected jolt through me. When do we start? I asked. Dominic pulled out a pen and slid the contract toward me. The moment you sign this, I picked up the pen, feeling the weight of it in my hand. This was insane. Absolutely insane. But what choice did I have? I signed my name on the dotted line and my fate was sealed. Welcome back, Andrew, Dominic said, something unreadable in his voice. Pack your things tonight. You move in tomorrow. As I walked out of that conference room, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just made a deal with the devil himself. And the worst part? I'd do it all over again. The next morning, I stood outside Dominic's penthouse with 2 suitcases containing everything I owned. The building was in the most expensive part of the city. The kind of place where the doormen wore white gloves and the lobby had actual marble columns. Dominic answered the door himself, dressed casually in dark jeans and a white button-down shirt. I'd never seen him in anything but suits. The sight was jarring, making him seem more human somehow. Come in, he said, stepping aside. The penthouse was exactly what I'd expected. Massive, minimalist, cold, Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city. The furniture was all sharp angles and designer labels. Everything was black, white, or gray. There wasn't a single personal touch anywhere. No photos, no books. Nothing that indicated a real person actually lived here. "Your room is down this hall," Dominic said, grabbing one of my suitcases. "Second door on the left." I followed him, acutely aware of how his shirt stretched across his shoulders as he walked. The guest room was larger than my entire apartment had been, with its own bathroom and a king-sized bed that looked like a cloud. "This is," I trailed off, not sure how to finish that sentence, "temporary." Dominic set my suitcase down. "We have my grandfather's birthday dinner tonight. Black tie. Don't embarrass me." The cold businessman was back. I bristled at his tone. "You hired me to act like your fiancé, not to be your puppet. I know how to handle myself." His eyes narrowed. "Andrew, my family isn't easy. Especially my grandfather, Edward. He's the one pushing this marriage agenda, and he's sharp as hell. He'll test you, try to find weak points, look for any crack in our story." He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "Are you ready for that?" Honestly, I wasn't ready at all. But I'd signed the contract. I'd taken his money. There was no backing out now. "I'll be fine," I said, with more confidence than I felt. Dominic studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Be ready by 6. "And Andrew?" He paused at the door. "Thank you for doing this." The words surprised me so much that I didn't respond, and then he was gone, leaving me alone in this pristine, impersonal room that would be my home for the next 6 months. At 5:45 p.m., I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my bow tie for the 10th time. The tuxedo Dominic had sent up fit perfectly. Clearly, he'd had it tailored to my measurements. The thought that he knew my sizes, that he'd paid attention to those details, made something uncomfortable twist in my stomach. When I finally emerged from my room, Dominic was waiting in the living room. He looked up from his phone and something flashed in his eyes. His gaze traveled over me slowly, from my polished shoes to my slicked back hair, and for a moment neither of us spoke. "You clean up well," he finally said, his voice lower than usual. "Thanks," I replied, trying to ignore the way my pulse quickened under his scrutiny. The car ride to his grandfather's estate was tense and silent. I watched the city give way to sprawling suburbs, then to the kind of neighborhood where each house was set back from the road by gates and long driveways. "Remember," Dominic said as we pulled up to an imposing mansion, "we've been secretly dating for 6 months. We kept it quiet because of the workplace relationship policy. We got engaged 2 weeks ago. I proposed at the place where we had our first real conversation, my office, late one night when everyone else had gone home." "Got it," I said, my mouth dry. "Secret romance, office proposal, hopelessly in love." "Exactly." Then his hand covered mine, warm and firm. "And Andrew? No matter what happens in there, remember we're on the same side." Before I could respond, the door opened. Dominic stepped out and came around to my side, offering his hand to help me out. The gesture was unexpectedly gentlemanly, and I took his hand, trying to ignore how right it felt when his fingers laced with mine. The party was already in full swing. Champagne flowed freely, string music floated through the air, and people in designer clothes clustered in small groups, their laughter artificial and their smiles sharp. I felt like I'd walked onto a movie set, except everyone was really this wealthy and really this disconnected from reality. Dominic's hand moved to the small of my back, a possessive gesture that sent shivers up my spine. "Stay close to me," he murmured into my ear, his breath warm against my skin. Then an elderly man appeared before us, and I knew immediately this was Edward Hale. He had Dominic's sharp features, but age had turned them severe. His eyes were like a hawk's missing nothing. "Dominic." His voice was commanding despite his age. "You're late, grandfather." Dominic's hand pressed more firmly against my back. "I'd like you to meet Andrew Collins, my fiancé." The silence that fell over the nearby conversations was deafening. All eyes turned to us. I fought the urge to run. Edward's gaze locked onto me, assessing, calculating. "Fiancé?" "Well," he stepped closer and I forced myself not to back away. "This is unexpected. What do you do, Andrew?" Dominic's hand pressed a warning. "I worked with Dominic at Hale Industries. We decided recently that we wanted to prioritize our personal life over our professional one. Edward circled us slowly, like a predator studying prey. Dominic has never brought anyone to a family function before. You must be very special. He is, Dominic said, and something in his tone made my heart skip. Very special. Edward's eyes narrowed. We'll see about that. Come, both of you. I want to introduce you to the family. The next hour was a blur of introductions, scrutinizing looks and invasive questions. Dominic's relatives were polite on the surface but ruthless underneath, each one trying to trip me up, to find the lie. But Dominic never left my side, his presence a constant anchor. When dinner was finally announced, I excused myself to find the bathroom. I needed a moment to breathe, to collect myself. But as I walked back down the corridor, I heard voices coming from a partially open door. Dominic's voice, and Edward's. I knew I shouldn't eavesdrop, but I couldn't help myself. I stopped just outside, my heart pounding. This is a farce, Dominic. Edward's voice was cold with disapproval. I know a fake relationship when I see one. It's not fake. Then why don't you look at him the way a man in love should? Where's the spark, the passion? Your eyes are empty when you touch him. My chest tightened painfully. Of course Edward saw through us. Of course this wouldn't work. You don't know what you're talking about, Dominic said, but his voice lacked conviction. I'm giving you 1 month, Dominic. 1 month to prove this is real. Or I'm moving forward with the arranged marriage to the Chen family. Their daughter is suitable, and she comes from proper stock. This boy, whoever he is, he's not one of us. I backed away quietly, my mind racing. 1 month. We had 1 month to convince Edward this was real. 1 month to create a spark that didn't exist. When I returned to the dining room, Dominic caught my eye across the table. Something in my expression must have given me away because his jaw tightened. He knew that I knew. And as I sat down to dinner, forcing smiles and making small talk, all I could think was, how do you fake something as real as love? How do you create fire where there's only ice? The dinner dragged on, each course more elaborate than the last. I pushed food around my plate, hyper-aware of every moment Dominic touched me, his hand on my knee under the table, his arm around my shoulders when we posed for photos, the way he leaned in to whisper comments that made others think we were sharing intimate secrets. It should have felt like acting. But with each touch, each look, each moment, something was shifting inside me. Something dangerous. When we finally left, hours later, I was exhausted. The drive home was silent again, but this time the tension felt different. Heavier. More complicated. You heard? Dominic said as we entered the penthouse. It wasn't a question. Yes. Then you know what we're up against. I turned to face him, suddenly angry. You should have told me your grandfather would be this skeptical. You should have prepared me better. Would it have changed anything? He loosened his bow tie, the gesture somehow intimate. You still would have signed the contract. You still needed the money. He was right, but it still stung. So what now? How do we make this convincing? Dominic looked at me for a long moment. Something unreadable in his dark eyes. Then he closed the distance between us, backing me against the wall. My breath caught. We practice, he said softly. His hand came up to cup my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone. We learn to make it look real. My heart hammered in my chest. This is just practicing, he confirmed, but his voice was rough, and his eyes had dropped to my lips. This was dangerous. This was exactly what I'd been afraid of. But as he leaned closer, his breath mingling with mine, I couldn't bring myself to pull away. This was just a contract. Just business. Just 6 months of pretending. So why did it already feel like so much more? When we returned to the penthouse that night, Dominic immediately loosened his tie and collapsed onto the leather sofa. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked human. Exhausted. The perfect mask he always wore had slipped, revealing someone who carried the weight of the world on his shoulder. You did well tonight, he said without looking at me. His head tilted back against the cushions. Eyes closed. I stood awkwardly by the entrance, still in my tuxedo. What do you mean? My grandfather isn't easy to fool. He spent his entire life reading people, manipulating them, finding their weaknesses. Dominic finally opened his eyes and looked at me. But you handled him. You didn't crack under pressure. I walked over and sat in the chair across from him, my own exhaustion catching up with me. The adrenaline that had kept me going all evening was finally wearing off. Dominic, can I ask you something? Go ahead. Do you really think this will work? A fake relationship? I leaned forward, studying his face. Your grandfather already suspects something. What if we can't convince him? Dominic sat up straighter, his dark eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. If you're good enough at acting, then yes, it will work. And what if? I hesitated, then pushed forward. What if I start feeling real emotions? What happens then? He froze. Every muscle in his body went rigid, and something flickered across his face. Fear, hope? I couldn't tell. I laughed, trying to break the tension, and waved my hand dismissively. Relax. I'm joking. But I wasn't joking. Not even a little bit. Dominic's expression remained unreadable for a long moment before he finally said, You should get some rest. Tomorrow's gonna be busy. I nodded and stood, but as I walked toward my room I could feel his eyes on my back. The weight of his gaze sent shivers down my spine. In my room I changed into the pajamas I'd packed and lay down on the enormous bed. But sleep wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes I felt Dominic's hand on my waist again. Remembered the way he'd looked at me during dinner. The protective way he'd kept me close. My body still remembered the warmth of his touch, and it confused the hell out of me. This was just a contract. Just business. So why was my heart racing every time I thought about him? I was still wide awake an hour later when my door suddenly opened. Dominic stood in the doorway, still fully dressed except for his jacket. What's wrong? I sat up quickly, my heart jumping into my throat. We need to go to the mall tomorrow. To buy a ring. A ring? I repeated, confused. An engagement ring. He stepped into my room, and in the dim light from the hallway, his face was half in shadow. The media is watching us now. After tonight's announcement, everyone will be looking for proof. We need to make this look real. That made sense, I supposed, but something in his posture told me there was more. He hesitated for a second, and I saw his jaw tighten. And Andrew, starting tomorrow, we'll be sharing a room. My heart stopped. What? Why? My grandfather mentioned he might make surprise visits to check on us. If he sees we're sleeping in separate rooms, this whole thing falls apart. Dominic's voice was matter-of-fact, but I could hear the tension underneath. We need to be prepared for anything. I swallowed hard, my mouth suddenly dry. Fine, but we need to establish something right now, Dominic. This is just acting. Nothing more. He looked at me for a long moment, his expression impossible to read in the darkness. Yes, just acting. But the way he said it, slow, deliberate, almost uncertain, made me wonder if he was trying to convince me or himself. After he left, I lay back down, my mind racing, sharing a room with Dominic Hale, sleeping in the same bed as the man who'd fired me, who'd offered me $500,000 to pretend to love him, who made my pulse race with just a look. This was going to be so much harder than I'd thought. The next morning, I woke up to find a note on my nightstand in Dominic's sharp handwriting. Be ready by 10. Don't keep me waiting. At exactly 9:55 I emerged from my room wearing dark jeans and a simple sweater. Dominic was already waiting by the door, dressed casually in black pants and a gray Henley that made him look less like a CEO and more like a dangerous model. Ready? He asked, his eyes sweeping over me briefly. As I'll ever be. The mall was everything I expected, upscale, crowded, and full of people who definitely recognized Dominic Hale. Heads turned as we walked through, whispers following in our wake. Dominic reached for my hand, lacing our fingers together with practiced ease. Smile, he whispered close to my ear, his breath warm against my neck. We're being watched. Goosebumps erupted across my skin. I forced a smile, trying to look like a man in love instead of someone whose entire nervous system was on high alert. The jewelry store was intimidating. All gleaming glass cases and ridiculously expensive pieces. A sales associate immediately rushed over when she recognized Dominic. Mr. Hale, what an honor. How can we help you today? We're looking for an engagement ring, Dominic said smoothly, his arms sliding around my waist and pulling me close. Something simple but meaningful. We spent the next 30 minutes looking at rings, and I felt increasingly out of place. Every piece cost more than I'd make in a year. But then Dominic stopped at a particular ring, a platinum band with a single small diamond. It was understated, elegant, and somehow perfect. This one, he said, and the certainty in his voice made my chest tighten. When the associate slipped it onto my finger to check the size, something shifted inside me. The ring fit perfectly, and when I looked up, Dominic was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite name. "It looks good on you," he said softly. "Yeah," I managed to reply, my voice barely above a whisper. "It does." We were leaving the store, Dominic's arm protectively around my shoulders, when a reporter appeared out of nowhere with a camera crew. "Mr. Hale, congratulations on your engagement. Can you tell us about your relationship? It seems rather sudden." Dominic's public persona snapped into place instantly. He smiled that perfect camera-ready smile. "Love is never planned. When you know, you know." The reporter turned to me. "And Andrew, what would you like to say about—" I opened my mouth, but before I could speak, Dominic pulled me against him and kissed me. The world stopped. Everything disappeared. The cameras, the reporter, the curious onlookers. All I could feel was Dominic's lips on mine, soft but demanding, his hand cradling the back of my head, his other arm locked around my waist. My body ignited, every nerve ending firing at once. Without thinking, my hands found his chest, gripping his shirt as I kissed him back. When he finally pulled away, I was breathless, dizzy, completely undone. The crowd around us was applauding, cameras flashing like crazy, but I barely registered it. All I could see was Dominic, his dark eyes searching mine, his chest rising and falling rapidly. "Let's go," he said quietly, but his voice was rough, strained. In the car, I finally found my voice. "Was that really necessary?" "Yes. For the public image." His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, knuckles white. "You could have warned me. If I'd warned you, you would have been awkward. It needed to look natural." He glanced at me briefly. "Relax, Andrew. It was just acting. Just acting." "Right. Of course." So why was my heart still pounding like I'd run a marathon? Why could I still taste him on my lips? Why did every cell in my body want him to do it again? That night, I moved my things into Dominic's room. Our room now, the space was massive, dominated by a king-sized bed that suddenly seemed very small considering we'd both be sleeping in it. Dominic was already there when I entered, lying on the bed shirtless, reading through some files. My mouth went dry at the sight of him, all lean muscle and smooth skin. "Do you always sleep like that?" I asked, trying to sound casual and failing miserably. "Yes. Is that a problem?" "No." I grabbed my pillow and deliberately placed it down the middle of the bed. "I'll stay on this side. You stay on yours." He closed his file and looked at me, something almost like amusement in his eyes. "Andrew, you don't need to be afraid of me." "I'm not afraid," I lied, climbing into bed and turning off my lamp. In the darkness, I was hyper-aware of everything. His breathing, the warmth radiating from his side of the bed, the subtle scent of his cologne. Sleep seemed impossible. Then his voice cut through the silence. "Andrew, that kiss today, did it bother you?" I didn't answer immediately, my heart racing. "I'd understand if it made you uncomfortable, but I need to know." "No," I interrupted, my voice barely a whisper. "It didn't bother me." Silence stretched between us, heavy and charged. Then, "Good." And in that moment, lying in the darkness next to him, I realized something terrifying. This contract, this fake relationship, it was becoming something more, something real, something dangerous, and I had no idea how to stop it. I woke up to sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows and an arm draped across my waist. For a moment, still half asleep, I didn't register what was happening. Then it hit me. Dominic was pressed against my back, his body warm, his breathing slow and even against my neck. My entire body went rigid. The pillow barrier I'd carefully constructed down the middle of the bed was now on the floor. And somehow during the night, we'd gravitated toward each other. His arm was heavy and possessive around me, and I could feel every inch of his bare chest against my back. I should have moved, should have pulled away, but I didn't. Instead, I lay there, my heart hammering, acutely aware of how perfectly we fit together. Then Dominic stirred, and I felt him freeze as he realized our position. His arm immediately withdrew, and he rolled away from me without a word. "Sorry," he muttered, his voice rough with sleep. "I didn't mean to." "It's fine," I interrupted quickly, sitting up and running a hand through my hair. We were both asleep. It doesn't mean anything. But it did. It meant everything. And we both knew it. Breakfast was awkward and silent. Dominic buried himself in his laptop while I pushed eggs around my plate, neither of us acknowledging what had happened. The tension was suffocating. "We have a charity gala tonight," Dominic said finally, not looking up from his screen. "Another public appearance. My assistant will bring your suit by this afternoon." "Okay. And Andrew?" He finally met my eyes. "Try to look like you actually want to be with me this time. My grandfather will be there watching." The criticism stung, but he was right. If we were going to sell this, I needed to step up my game. The gala was held at a historic hotel downtown. All marble columns and crystal chandeliers. I felt like I'd stepped into another world. One where everyone was beautiful, wealthy, and completely out of my league. Dominic kept his hand on the small of my back as we navigated the crowd, introducing me to business associates and society people, whose names I immediately forgot. I smiled until my face hurt, made polite conversation, and tried to ignore how good it felt when Dominic touched me. Then I saw her, a stunning woman in a red dress, making her way directly toward us with purpose in her eyes. "Dominic." Her voice was honey and poison mixed together. "What a surprise seeing you here. I heard the news about your engagement." "How unexpected." Dominic's body tensed beside me. "Victoria, I didn't know you'd be attending. Wouldn't miss it." Her eyes raked over me with barely concealed disdain. "So this is Andrew, the assistant you fired." The way she said it made it sound dirty, shameful. My cheeks burned. "Former executive assistant," Dominic corrected, his voice cold. "And now my fiancé. How romantic." Victoria's smile was sharp as a knife. Though one has to wonder, what does a man like Dominic Hale see in someone so ordinary? Before I could respond, Dominic's arm tightened around me, pulling me flush against his side. "He sees everything. Andrew is the most extraordinary person I've ever met, and I'm lucky he agreed to spend his life with me." The conviction in his voice made my breath catch. He sounded like he actually meant it. Victoria's mask slipped for just a moment, showing something ugly underneath. Then she recovered, laughed lightly, and walked away. But the damage was done. I felt small, inadequate, painfully aware that I didn't belong in Dominic's world. "Ignore her," Dominic said quietly, reading my expression. "Victoria is my ex-fiancée. She's bitter that I ended things. She's also right," I said, pulling away from him. "I am ordinary. I'm nobody, Dominic. Everyone here can see that I don't fit into your life." "Andrew." "Excuse me. I need some air." I made my way to the terrace, grateful for the cool night breeze. The city sparkled below and I gripped the railing, trying to calm my racing thoughts. What was I doing? Playing dress up in a world where I'd never belong. Pretending to be someone I wasn't. "She got to you." I turned to find Dominic standing behind me, his expression unreadable. "She just said what everyone's thinking," I replied. "No. She said what she wanted you to believe." He moved closer and I backed against the railing. "You want to know what I see when I look at you, Andrew?" "Dominic. Don't." "I see someone who worked harder than anyone else in my company. Someone who never gave up, even when things got difficult. Someone brave enough to stand up to me, honest enough to call me out on my bullshit." He was close now, so close I could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. "I see someone who makes me want to be better than I am." My heart was in my throat. "You're just saying that because what? Because it's part of the act?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Maybe it started that way, but somewhere along the line, Andrew, it stopped being an act for me." I couldn't breathe. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that kiss yesterday? It wasn't for the cameras. It was for me. Because I've wanted to kiss you since the first day you walked into my office 2 years ago." The world tilted. "That's not possible. You fired me. You said I was a distraction." "You were. You are." His hand came up to cup my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone. "You distract me from work, from rational thinking, from everything that used to matter. Do you know how hard it was to sit across from you every day? Knowing I could never have you, knowing it would be inappropriate, unprofessional. So you fired me? Anger flared in my chest. That's your solution? It was the only way to have you. Don't you see? His other hand found my waist. As long as you were my employee, you were off limits. But like this? As my fiancé, even if it's fake, at least I get to touch you, hold you, pretend even for a little while that you're mine. Tears burned behind my eyes. You're cruel, Dominic. You know that? You're asking me to pretend when you know I cut myself off, horrified at what I'd almost admitted. When you know what? His voice was barely a whisper. Finish that sentence, Andrew. When you know I can't just pretend anymore. I confessed, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. Every touch, every look, every moment we're together, it's killing me because it's not real. Because in 6 months, this ends, and I have to go back to a world where you don't look at me like this. Where I'm nobody to you again. You were never nobody to me. His forehead pressed against mine, and I could feel his heart racing as fast as my own. Never. Then why? My voice broke. Why make me sign that contract? Why not just tell me the truth? Because I'm a coward. His laugh was bitter, self-deprecating. Because I'm so used to controlling everything, making deals, using contracts to get what I want. I didn't know how to just be honest. How to tell you that you terrify me because you make me feel things I've never felt before. Before I could respond, his lips found mine. But this kiss was different from the one at the mall. This wasn't for show, wasn't calculated or controlled. This was desperate, hungry, years of repressed wanting finally breaking free. I melted into him, my hands fisting in his jacket, pulling him closer as if I could merge us into one person. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, he pressed his lips to my forehead. Tell me you feel it too. Tell me I'm not insane. You're not insane, I whispered against his chest. I feel it. I felt it for so long I thought I'd go crazy. We stood there on that terrace, holding each other as the party continued inside, and something fundamental shifted between us. The contract didn't matter anymore. The fake engagement, the 6-month timeline, the money, none of it mattered. What mattered was the way he held me like I was precious. The way my heart finally felt at home in my chest. The way we fit together, two broken pieces finally finding where they belonged. So what now? I asked eventually. Dominic pulled back just enough to look at me, and his smile was real. Not the practiced public one, but something genuine and beautiful. Now we stop pretending. We make this real. What about the contract? Forget the contract. He kissed me again, soft and sweet. I want you, Andrew. Not for 6 months. Not for show. Just you. If you'll have me. I laughed through my tears. That depends. Are you going to fire me again? Never. His arms tightened around me. You're stuck with me now. For real this time. And as we stood there under the stars, I realized that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find what you were looking for all along. Sometimes love is a contract that rewrites itself into something beautiful. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of stolen kisses, whispered confessions, and nights wrapped in each other's arms. We kept up appearances publicly, but behind closed doors everything had changed. Dominic was different, softer, more open. He'd started smiling more, real smiles that reached his eyes and made my heart stutter. We still hadn't told anyone the truth about our feelings. As far as the world knew, we were still just playing our parts. But every touch, every glance, every moment was infused with something genuine now. Something that felt dangerously close to love. I was happier than I'd been in years. Maybe happier than I'd ever been. Which should have been my first warning that something was about to go wrong. It was a Tuesday night, around 2 in the morning when I woke up thirsty. Dominic was still asleep beside me, one arm thrown across my waist. I carefully extracted myself and padded to the kitchen for water. That's when I heard his voice coming from the balcony. Dominic's voice, low and urgent. Yes, Marcus. Andrew doesn't know anything. He's taking the contract seriously. A pause. No, I can't tell him the truth. Not yet. Not when we're this close. My blood ran cold. I pressed myself against the wall, straining to hear more. The threats have escalated. Victor's made it clear he'll go after Andrew's mother if we don't. Dominic's voice dropped too low to hear. I know, but this engagement is the only thing keeping Andrew safe. As long as he's officially mine, Victor can't touch him without starting a war with my family. The glass in my hand slipped, but I caught it before it fell. My mind was racing, trying to piece together what I'd just heard. Threats? Victor? Keeping me safe? Look, I never wanted to lie to him, Dominic continued, his voice pained. But what was I supposed to do? Tell him I fired him because a business rival threatened to hurt his family? Tell him this whole engagement started as protection? Not, he stopped abruptly. Forget it, I can't think about this now. Just keep monitoring Victor's movements. I need to know if he makes a move. The call ended. I heard Dominic's footsteps coming back inside, and I quickly retreated to the bedroom, my heart pounding. I lay down, pretending to be asleep, as he slipped back into bed beside me. But sleep was impossible now. My mind kept replaying what I'd heard. Dominic had fired me to protect me. The engagement was about keeping me safe from some business rival named Victor. And what had he been about to say before he stopped himself? This engagement started as protection, not what. I waited until I heard Dominic's breathing even out, then carefully got up. I needed answers, and I knew where to find them. Dominic's home office was locked, but I'd seen where he kept the spare key. Inside, I booted up his personal computer, guilt gnawing at me even as I did it. I was violating his privacy, his trust, but I needed to know the truth. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. Emails. Dozens of them, all from the weeks before I'd been fired. Your little pet assistant is quite charming, Dominic. It would be a shame if something happened to him. Or perhaps his mother in that hospital bed. Victor Chen. Remove Andrew Collins from your company by Friday or I'll make good on my promises. You know I will. Victor Chen. Smart choice, Dominic. But we both know you're not over your little infatuation. If he stays in your life, the threats continue. Victor Chen. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through more emails, piecing together the full story. Victor Chen, the head of Chen Industries and Dominic's biggest rival, had somehow discovered Dominic's feelings for me. He'd used that knowledge as leverage, threatening my family to force Dominic to push me away. But then Dominic's grandfather had announced the arranged marriage ultimatum, and Dominic had seen an opportunity. As his official fiancé, I'd be under the Hale family's protection. Victor wouldn't dare touch me without risking an all-out war between two of the city's most powerful families. It had never been about fooling his grandfather. It had always been about protecting me. The office door opened, and I jumped, spinning around. Dominic stood there in just his pajama pants, his hair mussed from sleep, his eyes wide with shock. Andrew? What are you? His gaze fell on the computer screen, and his face went pale. You weren't supposed to see that. When were you going to tell me? My voice came out steadier than I felt. When were you going to tell me the real reason you fired me? Andrew, I can explain. You fired me to protect me. I stood up, emotions swirling in my chest. Anger, confusion, love, fear. All this time you let me think you didn't care. You let me believe I was nothing to you. I had no choice. He moved toward me, hands raised. Victor was serious, Andrew. He has connections to people who would have hurt you, hurt your mother. I couldn't risk it, so you broke my heart instead? Tears spilled down my cheeks. Do you have any idea what that day did to me? Being fired? Losing everything? I thought I'd done something wrong. I thought I meant nothing to you. You meant everything to me. That's why I had to let you go. His voice cracked, and I saw tears in his eyes too. I was trying to keep you safe. By lying to me? Yes. He ran his hands through his hair in frustration. Yes, by lying to you, because the truth would have put you in more danger. If you'd known what Victor was threatening, you would have tried to fight back. You would have made yourself a target. I sank back into the chair, overwhelmed. The engagement, it was all about protection. Dominic knelt in front of me, taking my hands in his. At first, yes. But Andrew, you have to believe me. What happened between us, what we've built these past weeks, that's real. My feelings for you are real. How am I supposed to know that? I pulled my hands away. How am I supposed to trust anything when you've been lying from the start? Because I love you. The words hung in the air between us. raw and desperate. I'm in love with you, Andrew. I have been since the moment you first challenged me in a board meeting, since you first looked at me like I was just a man instead of a title. When I watched you walk out of my office that day, my heart broke. And every day since I've been trying to find a way back to you. You love me? My voice was barely a whisper. Yes. He cupped my face in his hands, his thumbs wiping away my tears. I love you. Not because of a contract. Not because of protection. Not because of any logical reason. I love you because you're you. Because you make me laugh. Because you call me on my bullshit. Because you see me the real me and you don't run away. I don't run away from the things I love, I said softly, even when they hurt me. His breath caught. Does that mean? It means I love you too, you idiot. I grabbed his shirt, pulling him closer. I love you even though you're impossible and controlling and you make terrible decisions when you're trying to protect people. I know. I'm sorry, I should have trusted you with the truth from the beginning. He pressed his forehead to mine. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you if you let me. The rest of your life is a long time. Not long enough. His lips found mine in a kiss that tasted like tears and promises. Not nearly long enough. When we broke apart, I was still crying, but these were different tears. Happy tears. Healing tears. So what now? I asked. Dominic stood, pulling me up with him and into his arms. Now I go to war with Victor Chen. I've been too cautious, too afraid of making moves that might hurt you. But now that you the truth, now that we're in this together, his eyes hardened with determination. He threatened the person I love. That doesn't go unanswered. Dominic, if he's dangerous, so am I. He kissed my temple, especially when someone threatens what's mine. I'm not a possession. No. His arms tightened around me. You're my partner, my equal, my everything, and I'm gonna make sure Victor Chen never threatens you again. I pulled back to look at him, seeing the fierce protector beneath the cold CEO facade. We do this together. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Together, he agreed. And as we stood there in his office, surrounded by evidence of threats and danger, I realized something important. Love isn't just the easy moments, the stolen kisses and whispered words. Love is also standing beside someone when things get hard, trusting them to fight for you while you fight for them. Our contract had started as a lie wrapped in protection, wrapped in desperation. But somewhere along the way, it had transformed into something true, something worth fighting for. I love you, Andrew Collins, Dominic said, his voice strong and clear. And I'm going to spend every day proving it to you. You already have, I replied, pulling him down for another kiss. You already have. Outside, the sun was beginning to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. A new day, a new beginning. Together, we'd face whatever came next. Together, we were unstoppable. And the contract that had brought us together? It didn't matter anymore, because what we had now was so much stronger than any legal agreement. We had love. Real, messy, complicated, beautiful love. And that was worth more than any amount of money could ever buy.